Assalamualaikum and hi everyone. Finally, we are in the last chapter, chapter 7. So we're going to look at the network security. For the first part here, we're going to look at the CIA Triad model. Okay, so these are the content for the slides for today. We're going to look at the computer security concept, okay, the CIA Triad model, and then the network security, what's inside the network security, the taxonomy of attacks, means the type of attacks, okay, and also the classification of attacks in terms of passive and also active attack. Okay, and NIST, or the National Institute of Standard and Technology Computer Security Handbook, define the computer security concept as the protection afforded to an automated information system in order to attain the applicable objectives of preserving the integrity, availability, and confidentiality of information system resources, including hardware, software, firmware, information data, and also telecommunication. So basically, this integrity, availability, and confidentiality, that is what made the CIA Triad model. Okay, so the CIA Triad model here for the data and also services is made up of confidentiality, availability, and integrity. So basically, these three are the security goals. Okay, because now we are living in the information era and we need to keep the information about every aspect of our lives. Okay, so in addition, nowadays we are also uh, involved in online class, and everything in the new norm here are online. Okay, so we need to keep the information, or we need to keep the information online on every aspect of our lives. So in other words, information here is an asset, okay, that we need to value just like any other asset. And this asset, for example, this information as an asset, it needs to be secured from attacks. Okay, so these three are the security goals. Okay, in which it means that the information needs to be confidentiality. Okay, means it needs to be hidden from the unauthorized access. It needs to have the integrity, okay, protected from unauthorized change, and also it needs to have this availability feature, which is available to an authorized entity when it is needed. Okay, so we're gonna look at the definition of this confidentiality, integrity, and availability into more details. Okay, so first, the confidentiality means preserving authorized restrictions on information access and disclosure, including means for protecting personal privacy and also proprietary information. Okay, in other words, to be able to have this confidentiality, only the sender and intended receiver, okay, should be able to understand the contents of the transmitted message. Okay, means that, for example, in a communication between Alice as a sender and also Bob as a receiver, so only Alice and Bob should be able to understand the transmitted message. Okay, because eavesdroppers may intercept the message, and this necessarily requires that the message to be somehow encrypted so that an intercepted message cannot be understood by interceptor. Okay, let's say that Eve is the eavesdropper, so the message between Alice and Bob should not be intercepted by this Eve. Okay, so this aspect of confidentiality is probably the most commonly perceived meaning of the term secure communication. And a loss of confidentiality is the unauthorized disclosure of information, means that eavesdropper can listen to that message. Okay? For the integrity, it means that guarding against improper information modification or destruction, including ensuring information non-repudiation and authenticity. Okay, so let's say Alice and Bob wants to ensure that the content of their communication is not altered, okay, either by accident or either maliciously altered in transit, meaning that during the data from the sender to the receiver, okay, during the data transfer from the sender to the receiver. So they want to make sure that the content of the communication is not being altered or it's not being modified by others. Okay, for just now confidentiality, we just concerned about the eavesdropper. Okay, so for the integrity, it needs to ensure that there's no modification of the information, and some extensions to the chat summing techniques, okay, can be used to provide this integrity, okay, to provide this message integrity. A loss of integrity is the unauthorized modification or disruption of information. Okay, for example, the information can be disrupted. Right. So another one is availability. It means that ensuring timely and reliable access to a use of information. Okay, for example, actions by an attacker do not prevent users from having access to use of the system. Okay, let's say the simple example is website. If any hackers hack that website, we as a user may not be able to access the system. So this what it means by availability. Okay, so the information created and stored by an organization needs to be available to authorized entities. So example, whatever database that UTM has kept about its students, about its staff, okay, it needs to be available for the authorized entities. Okay, and this information is useless. It is not available. So if it's someone hacked that database and made it not available to authorized entities, though this information is considered useless. Okay, so information needs to be constantly changed, which means it must be accessible to authorized entities. And a loss of availability is the disruption of access to or use of information or an information system. Okay, in other words, the unavailability of information is just as harmful for an organization as the lack of confidentiality and also integrity. Okay, so imagine what will happen to our bank if we could not access our account for transaction. Okay, so the information is there, but it is considered useless because we cannot access the system. So this is what it made the CIA Triad model: confidentiality, integrity, and also availability. Okay, so moving on to the network security. In order to have a network security, there are three important elements. The first is security of communication. Okay, so security of communication means the security of the data transportation. Okay, so meaning that we want to avoid the risk of eavesdropping. Okay, another one is security of end system. Okay, it is more towards the security of the node. Okay, for example, we want to avoid data storage and manipulation. Okay, we want to avoid the risk of unauthorized use. If there's cases of unauthorized use, this will increase the risk of network connectivity. Okay, because let's say we have our own Wi-Fi in our house, then somebody who is not authorized to use our Wi-Fi can hack our password and use our Wi-Fi. So somehow this will increase the network connectivity. It will use our data. All right. And the next one is the security of the communication network. Okay, for example, the data transport, the risk of unauthorized use in the network. Okay, so this is more towards the network level or operational security. Okay, so moving on to the next slides, we're going to look at the details of the security of communication just now, okay, which is one of the elements that I have shown you just now. So these are the important things to secure the communication. The first one is confidentiality. Okay, we want the data to be only accessible by authorized parties. And this type of access includes printing, displaying, and other forms of disclosure, including simply revealing the existence of an object. Okay, we don't want that to be accessible to others. Okay, so also we don't want eavesdropping, okay, and no unauthorized access to information. So this can be avoided by using the encryption and also digital signature. okay, which we will look in part 2. And the next one is data integrity. Okay, we want that require that only authorized parties can modify the data. Okay, there should be no unauthorized manipulation of information. Right, so just imagine the simple website. Let's say we have a website. I guess somebody else manipulate the information that we have on the website. Okay, so this is a simple example. So we want this data integrity, and also we also want that this recipient receives data identical to what the originator sent. All right, so both the for the authentication, for this data integrity, this modification includes writing, changing or changing status, deleting, and also creating a new data. Okay, the new fake data. Right, for the data authenticity, okay, authenticity is required, for example, to verify the identity of a user, okay, for a service, for example. So for data authenticity, originator cannot claim fake identity. Okay, it means that both the sender and receiver should be able to confirm the identity of the other party involved in the communication, to confirm that, for example, we want to communicate with someone to confirm that someone is indeed is who or what they claim to be. Okay, so we don't want somebody else who take fake identity. So basically this also apply for this online learning, online tests, on online final exam. Okay, data authenticity is very important, because we do not want, we as a lecturers or in UTM do not want somebody else to claim your identity, taking the exam on behalf of you. Okay, so if we are face to face, okay, face to face human communication will solve this problem easily by visual recognition. But when we are using online, okay, when communication is happen online over a medium where we cannot see the other party, so this authentication is not that simple. Okay, so there should be system or protocol that can provide the security for this data authenticity. All right, okay, so another one is guaranteed delivery of messages. Okay, so we also for the security of communication also wants to ensure that there is no intruder that can remove the message. Okay, we want to ensure that the message is delivered to the destination safely. Okay, I mean, there's no one else intercepted the message in the middle of the data transfer process. Okay, so all of the above here can happen with or without detection by the originator or recipient. Okay, we as the sender or we as the recipient can detect this, or sometimes cannot detect this, or we do not know that this actually happened during the communication. Okay, okay, the next one is the security of end system. Okay, this is another element for secure communication. Okay, so the first features here is access to confidential data. Okay, we do not want the leaking of any information, for example, leaking of credit card account information. Okay, and this happen normally at the end system. Okay, similarly, we do not want any manipulation of data. Okay, end system here means at the source and also at the destination. Okay, there should be no manipulation of data. It's not in between. Okay, it's not in between the source and destination or during the data transferring process. Okay, security of end system means the security at the source and also at the destination. Before the data is sent to the destination, we do not want any manipulation of the data. Okay, for example, change or delete the information. Okay, another one is change of system. Okay, we also have to avoid the manipulation of configuration. Okay, example of this is authorization or account information. Okay, we do not want any manipulation of these things. Okay, or unauthorized running of programs. okay, at the source or also at the destination, or import of foreign or malicious program. Okay, example of this, for example, the operating system attacker that can control malicious files and also applications in the end system. Another one is denial of service or DOS attacks. Okay, so DOS attack can render a network host or other piece of infrastructure uh, unusable by legitimate users. Okay, for example, um, things that can be subjected to those attacks are servers, web servers, email servers, DNS servers, and also institutional network. Okay, all of these can be subjected to this denial of service attack. Okay, those attacks. This can cause system overload and cause system to hang or crash. And these internet those attacks are extremely common. Okay, and thousands of these attacks occurring every year. Okay, another element, the final element for the secure communication is the security of the communication network. Okay, it is similar to the end system attacks. However, these are directed more towards the network elements. Okay, for example, unauthorized network usage. Okay, somebody use the network without paying. And then modification of network configuration. Okay, basically it could happen at the routers, okay, and also any network elements. Change or delete information, change of DNS entries, or change of routing information. This can happen, okay, during the data transfer from the source to the destination. Okay, another one is denial of service attacks. However, this is more towards the network elements. Okay, for example, those attacks at DNS servers, routers, and also network management station. Okay, and finally, the impact availability of network service. Okay, to be able to access the service, okay, of the network, and also this also can happen, means that packet delivery to selected destinations. Okay, we do not want this to be impacted, okay, because of insecure communication network. Okay, the next one is the taxonomy of attacks. Okay, remember our triad model, one triad model, okay, with three goals of security: confidentiality, integrity, and also availability. Okay, this can be threatened by security attacks. Okay, this threat to confidentiality, integrity, and availability can occur because of this. Okay, because of these things. Okay, so now we are going to understand one by one the meanings of snooping, traffic analysis, modification, masquerading, replaying, repudiation, and also denial of service. Okay, so the first thing is attacks threatening confidentiality. Okay, so the first here is snooping. Okay, snooping means unauthorized access to or interception of data. Okay, so these terms here, snooping here, refers to unauthorized access to or interception of data. Okay, for example here, a file transferred through an internet may contain confidential information. So an unauthorized entity may intercept the transmission and use that contents for their own benefit. And to prevent snooping here, the data can be made non-intelligible to the interceptor by using encryption technique. When using encryption technique, the interceptor may look or may found that this data is useless for them. Okay, another one is traffic analysis can also threaten the confidentiality. Okay, it is a process of intercepting and examining messages in order to deduce information from patterns in communication. The example of this traffic analysis is monitoring online traffic. For example, one can find the email address of the sender or the receiver by monitoring this online traffic, and she can also these intruders can also collect a pairs of requests and responses to help her guessing the nature of the transaction. Okay, because these intruders actually monitor the pattern of this communication, okay, for their own use. Okay, and then another one is attacks another taxonomy is category is attack threatening availability. Okay, for example of this is denial of service. Okay, so this is actually a common attack to slow down or interrupt the service of a system. For this DOS attack, the attacker can use several strategies to achieve this. Okay, for example, he or she might send many bogus requests to a server. Bogus means fake requests to a server that the server crashes because of the heavy load. Okay, it will send the request and request until that server crashes. Okay, because too heavy, it cannot cope with too many requests. Okay, so the attacker also might intercept and delete a server's response to a client, making the client believe that the server is not responding. Another strategy is the attacker may also intercept requests from the clients and causing the clients to send requests many times and overload the system. So we are talking about the request between the client and also the server that can cause this denial of service attack. Okay, another taxonomy is attack threatening integrity. Okay, so we look by one by one. First, modification. Modification means modifies information via intercepting or assessing to make it beneficial to him or herself. Okay, for example, a customer sends a message to a bank to do some transaction, and the attacker intercepts the message and changes the type of transaction to benefit herself. Okay, so this can happen during online banking, and sometimes the attacker simply deletes or delay the message to harm the system. Okay, because they think they can benefit from that. Okay, so this is what we call modification. For masquerading, it means in other words, it is spoofing, okay, which happens when the attacker impersonates somebody else using stolen bank PIN number of bank card. Okay, impersonate somebody else means pretend to be somebody else. For example, an attacker might steal the bank card and PIN of a bank customer and pretend that she is that customer. Okay, sometimes the attacker pretends to be the receiver entity. Okay, for example, a user tries to contact a bank, but another site pretends that it is the bank and obtains some information from the user. Okay, this masquerading is quite often happen here in Malaysia, where we heard someone give their details of the bank to somebody else, pretend to be someone from the bank or someone from the police, something like that. Okay, so this is what we call masquerading. For the replaying, attacker obtains a copy of a message sent by a user and later tries to replay it. Okay, example here is bank payment. Okay, example here, a person sends a request to the bank to ask for payment to that attacker who has done a job for her. Okay, and the attacker intercepts the message and sends it again to receive another payment from the bank. So this is what we call replay. Alright, and finally, repudiation. Okay, the issue of repudiation is concerned with the user denying that he or she performed an action or initiated the transaction. Okay, you need defense mechanisms in place to ensure that all user activity can be tracked and recorded. Okay, this type of attack is actually different from others because it is performed by one of the two parties in the communication, the sender or the receiver. Okay, not by the interceptor. Okay, the sender of the message might later deny that she has sent the message. Okay, and the receiver of the message also might later deny that he has received the message. Okay, the idea of these two can happen. Okay, an example of denial by the sender would be a bank customer asking her bank to send some money to a third party but later denying that she has made such a request. And another example, denial by the receiver could occur when a person buys a product from a manufacturer and pays for it electronically. Okay, for example, you buy for someone else, okay, online, pays for it electronically, but the manufacturer later denies having received the payment and asks to be paid. So I think this happened a lot for online transaction. If we use, for example, if you use not so popular website to buy things, or we buy something from the Instagram, so this can happen. Okay, now we look at the two categories of attack. Okay, so attacks can also be categorized into these passive attacks and also active attacks. Basically, passive attacks is attempts to learn or make use of information from the system, but does not affect system resources. Okay, example here is eavesdropping on transmission. So in passive attack, the attacker's goal is just to obtain the information. Okay, this means that the attack does not modify data or harm the system, because the system can continue with its normal operation. However, the attack may harm the sender or the receiver of the message. Okay, it can release, for example, possibly sensitive, confidential message contents. And also another example is traffic analysis, which monitors frequency and length of messages to get info on senders. It is difficult to detect, and this can be prevented using encryption. Okay, and passive attacks are in the nature of eavesdropping on or monitoring of transmission. Okay, however, even with the encryption protecting message contents, an opponent might still be able to observe the pattern of these messages. Okay, the attacker can determine the location and identity of communicating hosts and could observe the like I said before, the frequency and length of the message to get the information of the sender. Right? Um, like I said, because it is difficult to attack because it does not involve any modification or alteration of the data. Okay, it can be prevented using encryption, and this how we deal with this passive attack is more on prevention rather than detection. Okay, the next one is active attacks. Okay, uh, it attempts to alter system resources or affect their operation. Okay, these active attacks involve modification of the data stream or the creation of a false data, for example, as opposed to the passive attack. Okay, passive attack does not modify any data, but for active attack, it alter the system resources and also the data. Okay, so it can be subdivided into four categories: masquerading, replay, modification of messages, and also denial of services. Okay, so we have learn about the meaning of these these terms before. Okay, unlike passive attack, it is easier to detect. Okay, detection may lead to deterrent. Okay, um, um, deterrent here means when once you detect this active attack, okay, we can the goal here is to recover from any disruption or delays caused by them. Okay, because this detection has deterrent effect, it may also contribute to the prevention. But however, this activity is harder to prevent. Okay, so we just for these active attacks, okay, the security is just focused on the detection and also the recovery of the system. Okay, so finally, some comparison between passive and also active attacks. Okay, if you look here, the types of attack here, the from the taxonomy of the attacks. Okay, snooping, traffic analysis, so on. Okay, and whether it belongs to the passive or also active attack, and what security goals that it is threatening. Okay, for example, here snooping and traffic analysis is passive attacks. Okay, and it threaten the confidentiality. Modification, masquerading, replaying, and repudiation is they are active attacks. Okay, threatening the integrity of the communication. And denial of attacks, of course, this is active attack. Okay, threatening the availability of the system. Okay, so we will meet again in part 2. Basically, this is all for part 1 CIA Triad model. Thank you.